external creditors, the Paris Club. That's the partial creditors committee that was set up. We understand it's this week to try and secure some financial assurances. Is that the case?
There have been a number of meetings already, and there will be some more meetings. And these meetings, as I mentioned, have been fruitful so far, giving both the fund on one side and then the sovereign Ghana on the other side the confidence that things are moving in accordance with our expectations.
And what's the status of China as we speak in terms of getting that required financial assurance from them?
The feedback that we have is that the minister's trip to China, I think last month or early April, yielded positive results. And the Chinese authorities are going through their administrative or their bureaucratic systems to be able to respond to us formally on that. But the indications that we are picking on that are very, 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 very positive.
Okay. Well, but one key issue that keeps coming up once we decided to, when we put out the flyer that we're speaking to you, then the key concern for some, one of the key questions that runs through was what actually was then the tipping point? For which reason we are knocking on the doors of the IMF again? What really was it? Panic? What kind of assessment was done when we were sure that that was not going to happen?
I think that's a very fair question. Let's go back to when the announcement was made. July 1, 2022. The government announcement under my hand essentially said that, one, having followed the developments, the economic developments, the government of Ghana had come up with an enhanced domestic program to turn around the Ghanaian economy. That was number one. And that number two, the program will require some balance of payment support, BOP support, from the International Monetary Fund. And therefore, the president had instructed the minister responsible for finance to start engagement with the fund in pursuance of this balance of payment support. And I think it's very, very important to refresh everybody's memory that the big answer to the resolution of our economic challenges lies in the hands of the government of Ghana and the people of Ghana. That big answer is within the framework of what we call the Enhanced Domestic Program, or which has been technically named as the PCPEG, the Post-COVID Program for Economic Recovery. Now, within that program, you require financing. And that financing will come from a combination of about three sources. Domestic resources, balance of payment support because we don't have access to the international capital markets, and then you also require some of our development partners to come in. And that's where, you talk of the financing assurances that will come in from the development partners. Now, what was the tipping point? Mm-hmm. The tipping point came when Ghana literally was denied access to the international capital markets. Because to finance our budget and to finance our economy, you need cedi and hard currency. No matter the amount of cedis that you have, if you have external obligations that are due in dollars, for example, you cannot pay those external obligations with cedis. If you owe Citibank, or you owe the Chinese, or you owe the Americans, you cannot pay that with cedi. So you need to work on your cedi financing of your economic program, but you also need to be able to access the currency market so that you have access to hard currency for that. Now, remember that a number of things happened that denied Ghana access to the international capital markets. I'm answering your question about the tipping point. Number one was that because of what had happened with COVID, primarily, we had to resort to borrowing that we had not planned for. Mm-hmm. And it brought our debt levels beyond sustainable limits. Sometimes when you hear government officials or economists argue that COVID played a major part in our problem, people like to dismiss it, that, they are just blaming somebody. But the reality, and as we came and all other economies are giving their numbers, the reality is that countries had to borrow a lot during COVID because economies went down and they needed to finance a lot of the interventions. So we had to resort to a lot of borrowing. The borrowing pushed many economies, including Ghana, beyond a certain limit. Now, once that happens, the credit rating agencies really don't care about the cause of why you have borrowed to a certain level. They will give a verdict. And the verdict they gave was that our debt had reached a particular level, and therefore, in terms of credit ratings, they were going to downgrade our credit ratings. That quickly becomes a signal to other potential investors and lenders who would have ordinarily invested hard currency in your economy. And once those credit ratings came, then you could not access the international capital markets because they had more or less issued a warning to everybody that Ghana's debt had reached a particular level. Never mind what caused it, but Ghana's debt reached a particular level. Now, at that warning point, you won't get new inflow of dollars. It's only your reserves that you are now depending on to meet all your obligations, such as buying fuel on the international market, importing essential medicines, importing essential items into the Ghanaian economy. You are now relying on just your reserves. You are not necessarily earning or bringing in new dollars because they have issued a warning, and therefore investors are skeptical of investing into the Ghanaian economy in terms of market investors. So you don't have access to the capital markets. That became the tipping point. And that was the point at which the president said, while we have a big program, the fund remains one of the only places where you can get access to the international capital markets or get access to an inflow of forex to show up the program that you want to run. And that was the point at which on the 1st of July, the president caused that engagement to start, and we've been working on it so that we can primarily get access to the capital market. Because if you don't, as demand rises for example, the dollar, and supply of the dollar is limited, the price of the dollar will go up. That is what you call depreciation of your currency. And once depreciation sets in, even if the price of the item on the global market has not changed, the price in Ghana will go up because now it's being bought with a more expensive, may I say, cedi. And that then culminates into your cost of living challenges that you're having. So that became the tipping point. That was the point that the president made that decision, and we've been acting on his instructions since then.